A new Monday morning, barely. I tried green tea last night, thinking that there was no caffeine. I was up for hours, 2 in the morning, but, my secret pleasure, my guilty pleasure, is going to Airbnb and seeing what's available. Welcome back, Artist Journal, July 7th, 2025, broadcasting from the inner half of the nervous system. My name's Adrian Pocobelli. Kazuhiro Aihara. This is from, I believe, late March. How did this escape my glance? I believe I was in Florence for the Primavera Digitale. Is my excuse. March 27th, 2025. Auction 0.13 ETH, Spit Joker. Another arresting work, another head-turning work here. And as we've come to expect and love from what's, again, it's like, it does recall the Martin Bruce beginning last time. This is work that looks like it can easily fit into your, institutional setting. And so it's kind of challenging. It's very, how I'd almost describe this? Is unapologetically process-oriented. As you see, there is we're going to see this at the end of the show, actually, little spoiler, or preview, foreshadowing, shall we say, this painting the background of the canvas here. This is something that is completely underappreciated. What we're going to see, actually, at the end of the show is an artist who is applying basically what I'd call a John Baldessari type move, which is in the emoji series, which maybe I can bring up. The internet is playing nice. Where in the emoji series by John Baldessari, you can't even see it in the images. Maybe we can find a super high res one. You see John Baldessari takes the white background, but when you look up close, as I have, there's one, I don't know if there's one in the Stadel, but there's another recent, of course, Baldessari has passed in the last few years, but there's another late Baldessari or recent Baldessari in the Stadel in Frankfurt am Main, and where you'll see he was so brilliant at the end. My favorite work of Baldessari, and he was a brilliant artist, saw a great show in Buenos Aires. Recently, last summer it was. But the more I see Baldessari's work, the more just impressed and consistent. Really just unpacking the theme and investigating, really, the theme of traveling through the mediums. Going from the CMYK dots, I think you'd call that rasterization, right? That you often see if you're walking by large posters on the street, you'll actually see the little dots, right? Taking that, magnifying it, and then maybe doing some, turning it into a different medium, putting in the painting medium, and seeing how that alchemical transformation that occurs when you're traveling between the mediums. Now, apologies for the tangents here. I don't know what happened to my sleep. It was a green tea sleep kind of night. As you see here, the background. Something that's totally, I would argue, overlooked and under-thought about by artists is, what are you doing with your background? See, Baldessari, maybe he thought it was too simple. It needed the white background. It needed, a brush texture, the ultimate minimal act, one could argue. You keep it white, but we'll just make it a brush texture. And here, so what you see is, okay, there's some stuff here. Maybe there's this white that was put as the first layer. It's not just gray, and then I'll do my drawing on top. Then we see what looks like actually a digital drawing. Actually, unfortunately, this seems to be the max I can make this thing. And what we see is what looks like digital drawing or painting. This is not, and look at these pixels here, easy to miss. So as you see with the dragging, and also the movement, we also see digital activity, so to speak, tropes, for lack of a better term. It's moving, right? And it's not, I guess technically you could call this a video, but really it's kind of video GIF, this sort of thing, the mini repeating moving image, right? We have the Joker. It seems actually, it's not quite abstract, right? We have the Joker here and the eyes. We have what looks like the mouth. It's called Split Joker. Maybe it just accidentally came out that way and it looked like the Joker. Maybe it started moving towards that and Kazuhiro just went with it. Maybe thinking with his eyes, similar to Martin Bruce. And we see here the two eyes, as you see, go from smaller to bigger. And then you almost get what reminds me of like a curio fringe type of just kind of like aerosoled, digital brush that changes colors. Again, something that is only possible like this, I would argue, in the digital medium. You could theoretically do that with video, but you might need to be like George Lucas there in the late 70s in order to pull that off. You have also this great, the lips, the red lips, whatever's going on inside. It says joke, I think, which is kind of cool. I mean, this is a brilliant work of the Joker, isn't it? I dare, call it a work of the Joker. I mean, interesting. What I also like is, I hope you can see it on the right. You see this little, what looked like a paint dot or like a drip is all of a sudden part of this layer that's expanding, and all of a sudden it's all expanding. And like, what's that doing there? Just this kind of nice irrational component, this wonderfully irrational component. It is interesting, actually. The animation, to a certain degree, there is a certain similarity to Curio Fringe, interestingly. So, all to say, we've looked at Curio Fringe in the past. You can see it on Object. Let's see if the internet plays nice. Object, Curio, see if the computer plays nice, see if everybody on this Monday morning here, Curio Fringe. And I think it's a pretty, like you see this, right? Kind of almost, you could put them, what a show. I'm creating a show as we speak here. You have Curio Fringe, you have Kazuhiro Aihara, you have Martin Bruce. What a show. What a show. And many, many more, of course. And we're going to talk about that in a second. Little Guide 2023. So as you see here. Now, so here, this is on Foundation. I believe minted on Foundation, which is probably another reason it escaped me. We may have seen this other one. This is Kazuhiro Aihara on Foundation. Most available here. This one sold. Deggy D. Shout out to Deggy D. Good job. Look at this. Almost like a UFO. Yes. So as we see here, Green Dude. So some selling, but quite a few available, as you'll see. So wonderful work here. Here's another one this April 3rd. And again, we see this kind of, I almost want to say a physical sensibility. It seems to me, and I don't know, but it seems to me that Kazuhiro Aihara, it looks to me as if, kind of reminds me of Cloaksy, Rat Cloak, where it looks like this person has experience with painting. And you're seeing it in the construction of the image, in how it's being constructed, in this understanding, I would argue, of, say, that you can just put these kind of lines where you're not even worrying too much about what they're doing, and it's about the process. This is a painterly way of thinking, so to speak. And I use the word painterly or painter, like way of thinking. And I use that loosely. You could also be a sculptor and thinking along these lines. But in this, it's a formula, so to speak, that you're creating as an artist. That's what Warhol did. That's what Polka did. And it, to a certain degree, you could argue previous to them that exists. Of course, everybody has their style, and it's basically a kind of ingredients and actions that are incorporated in order to make that work. But in a weird way, I would say to a certain degree that's a post-war sort of thing where the process is kind of emphasized and highlighted, so to speak, in ways that we see like this, where it goes, oh, you know what? It doesn't matter what I do. I can just scribble, almost like Warhol with the background. I can just like paint randomly. There's some people talk about the phase of Warhol's work where he's purposefully, bad painting phase, right? And it's quite interesting. Where, to the point where it's like the process just does it for me, even if I'm trying to make it bad. Right? Warhol, a true genius in a sense. Like, with everything that's sort of said about Warhol, sometimes it feels like some of the most important things are kind of are glossed over, shall we say. But we're talking about Kazuhiro Aihara. Kind of cool pixelation here as well. Kind of a nod, you might say, to the digital medium, as well as just like it looks cool and it's changing colors. And then we have what looks like a couple of flowers. So kind of mildly representational. Price 0.13 under cherries in full bloom. Pretty rad. And this was a pretty rad one too. We may have seen this one on X. Price 0.11, buy now, truth or dare. So I think we may have seen this. So again, what are we seeing here? And again, back to the process. I mean, why is this working? Why does this process work? And I would argue you are getting contrasts. You are getting the fuzzy movement in the background. You're getting the textured, I suspect, digital charcoal or digital oil stick. Could be real, by the way. And so you're getting the softness and what you might say the edge, as well as the edge of the pixels, contrasting. And of course, contrast is the magic where a lot of the beauty happens for whatever reason. And here we also have static, in the blue, it's static, but again, it has definitely a distinct, almost digital color blue, as if it's got like screen or multiply a layer style on top to kind of highlight it, so to speak. Some pixels here, and then a moving face on what look like two faces and a moving face on the right. This one's not moving. So, again, I'd say very sophisticated artwork here. Truth or dare. Very cool. This is from Kazuhiro Aihara's Stargaze. This is from the X feed. And again, hard to say, but I still think this is digital. I suspect this is digital. Which is which for me at least is quite interesting. You can almost see texture on the paper. I suspect that's digital paper, but I don't know. So interesting there. This is on Object, a recent work. So having quite a bit of range here too. Mush up rumors, as you see here. So an unpredictable artist as well, and working with GIF, but in these traditional kind of, what it looks like to me is someone who has trained their arm and their mind to work physically, who is now using digital tools. Like, that is what I see here. And then taking it a step further by animating it. That is what I see. So, very interesting. And what this sold for 19 Tezos, edition of 4, accepted an offer of 20. So there were several listed for 19 Tezos and sold one to Mikey Wilson. That's hilarious. So people may not really, kind of our bread and butter over here, what might not be first appreciated. Interesting variation here on that other work, interestingly. So lots to look at here. And as you see, I mean, these almost look like glitch ROMs, interestingly. So and look at here. I was like, are there any one of ones? Let's see what the one of one of the glitch ROM went for. As long as the computer plays nice. Let's see what happened there. 199 Tezos. So not totally unappreciated. So doing actually quite well, and that's true. I don't want to, Kazuhiro Aihara is actually quite appreciated. But you saw that other work Now, these are wonderful. I'm a huge fan. I think the cloud, I think OMG, I think I even remember OMG blog. There you go. Got that one for 99 Tezos. I think I started the show with this. What a fantastic work. And really, you see all of the principles that I've been basically describing here at work. This is a process work. It's not that every raindrop has to be perfect, right? It's not about that. It's about these different, basically, forms working and how they relate. This is, something I haven't brought up for a long time, but it's worth bringing up. This notion of the painting as a system of relations, right? Which brings us to a kind of it's kind of interesting, like in terms of, like, again, we're kind of back. I mean, I don't want to go too far on too many tangents on so little sleep here, but we're kind of going back to kind of newer ways of looking at the world as systems, right? And so I think that's kind of modern. I was watching a great course, or what's now called Wondrium, or the teaching company. They're probably the Great Courses again. I think they changed their name back to the Great Courses. I actually applied to get a link. They didn't want to give me a link, but I think they were just looking at my Instagram and going, what's this artist doing, wanting to do a referral? So I have to reply to them. That was a month ago. And so, but they were in I believe it's called Why Science Knows What It Knows, or one of these courses. Brilliant, brilliant professor. How we know what we know, but it's a science course, and discussing how systems are really kind of where we're at. And it's basically a course on epistemology, but of science, which is kind of our modern day, theory of knowledge, so to speak. That's what epistemology means, for those that don't know. So all to say, 17 minutes again. That is our cutoff here. So here is Kazuhiro Aihara on X, artist. So very cool. Very cool. Let's look at the comments. The artist as scientist is what I ended up settling on as the title there. Thank you for all the support. And we have some comments. Pixel Lord, back to watching your shows. Awesome. I remember PL, and it's great to have you back here because it gives me hope for our little blockchain art world to become a bigger one. So I guess we have to keep making and dropping, and most importantly, collecting. Indeed, it is an important. One of the beautiful things about this scene is what I like to call the rise of the artist collector. And because it's so cheap, especially on Tezos, people can afford, and you sell your art, and then it's already in the currency, the cryptocurrency, so you can just buy more art. It's right there. It's really cool. So indeed, thank you for the comment. Glad you're back and enjoying the show. Illusion T Soul, wonderful show. There really is something very intriguing about No Hygiene's artwork. You can feel a kind of a story going on, and yet each piece is very different and complex unto itself. There is a remarkable consistency, one might say, thematically, in No Hygiene's work. I agree. It's part of the persuasion of what I'd say of what you might traditionally consider aesthetically challenging work. There's a consistency to the aesthetic, which wins you over time. Repetition helps. But also within the thematically, you see the meat, you see the angels, and you go, there's kind of something going on here, a kind of system at work, one could argue. Thank you for the comment. K-Town Crypto King, only 10. Interesting. I beg to argue 10 equal 100 times 10 equal 100 and growing. And fair enough, as I said to K-Town Crypto King. As I was saying, I think I started the show last time saying, there's probably 10 masters. There are probably several more than 10. So fair enough. I stand corrected on that. But what I was trying to say by that is there are some unbelievable talents in this space, which I would consider world-class. And that's exciting. That's what I meant by that. And so I don't want to, so I use, let's call it 10 metaphorically. What I'm trying to say is there are a lot of talents that are world-class. And what I mean by that is could go head-to-head and even win in museum settings with what they are, putting out, or in contemporary art gallery settings. Look at that Kazuhiro Aihara. Imagine that at Gagosian. Would you turn your head? Would you be impressed? I would be. I'd be like, wow, Gagosian is in top form. is what I would say to myself. But hey, I'm drinking, as I say, I'm swimming in the Kool-Aid here. So I would say that, wouldn't I? Also, on X, thank you for the comments, Ebzer Deity. GM Adrian, what a joy it is to see one of the absolutely gorgeous Seasons work I'd commissioned by Martin Bruce, this work right here, one of the 4, as the opening feature. I knew when Martin accepted the commission that the art would be spectacular, but he demonstrated just how lacking my own expectations were compared to his incredible ability to surprise. Yeah, well put. I absolutely agree with your assessment of the answer, could you prompt this, and how this is one of the many key differentiating factors that makes Martin's work so exceptional. I've now essentially limited my collecting of art to those works in which the answer to the question would be a, quote, probably not, unless you put in the words, insert artist name, here's previous work, or Martin Bruce's previous work. There has always been a glut of derivative works in the art scene. With the advent of AI-generated art, this problem is orders of magnitude worse. So the question of yours, I believe, is a good one for not only collectors, but artists as well to be asking themselves. Indeed, it's never been easier, in a sense, to basically, copy. So I'm glad, as a collector, as well as an artist, that Ebzer Deity is highlighting that. It is an issue. Fortunately, not many in the Tezos art community. Fortunately for many in the Tezos art community, we have no paucity of artists, no lack of great artists whose work are truly original and compelling in a manner that cannot be easily copied by other artists or AI. Hoping that will continue to be the case for many years, as we see with Kazuhiro Aihara. Very interesting. Thank you for the comment. Ed Woods, thanks for showing not one but two works of mine, and thank you for your comments. Much appreciated. When you brought up Mario 64 in the comment by the user, totally agree with it. You should see the speedrunning scene with that game. Absolutely mind-blowing. I'd say the majority of influence on my art comes from video games, especially from the late 80s to early 2000s, and I don't think you're alone, Ed. I do not think you're alone. I think this is a major component of what I consider, the contemporary digital art mindset or aesthetic appreciation. This visual arts, we also could call the international visual arts underground, as I like to call it here. Video games are a key component. So fascinating, or what I like to call the second generation of digital art. Thank you for the comment, and it's interesting. In a sense, I can see it, but I have a feeling your feeling for Super Mario is a 64. Mario 64 is my feeling for Ultima 4 and Spy Hunter, right, in the Apple II. So hilarious and interesting. Stuart, thank you for another great episode. You've helped refine my own artistic preference. When there's a piece I like that you highlight, it gives me a bit more confidence in my own curation. Thanks again. You're more than welcome, and I really appreciate everybody humoring my curation here. It's kind of interesting. I've mentioned this a few times, but in my own mind, there's a certain degree of objectivity to it, which, of course, is an illusion. It is subjective. But I think it's almost like I've trained myself on the algorithm of staring at stamps, which was the first thing I collected, and then trading cards, first hockey cards, then baseball cards, and then comics from basically age 6 to age 23, let's call it, maybe 21. And then you could even go to vinyl covers, album covers. And I basically spent all my free time staring at these things. So I think that's the algorithm that I am. And then so I'm just bam, 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 for what that's worth. So I'm glad you appreciate it. Mr. K, awesome to hear from you. Wonderful individual. Helped put on Primavera Digitale in Florence. Tukes, watching right now, GM Poco. Awesome to hear from you, Tukes. Wonderful AI artist, I believe out of Brazil, who we've had on the Spaces way back. Music, really, really good show. Enjoyed this one. Would love to be there. Would love to be on there one day. Thank you. So I linked to the community. This is where sometimes I'm underslept, or I don't always get here, but I eventually get to the community at least once every 1 or 2 shows, and I will see it. So here's where you post if you want to get on the show and get on the radar, and I appreciate it. I'm glad you feel that way. Thank you, music. Joey Mono, GM, good to hear from you. HB, Human Boy, wonderful episode, and you're absolutely right. So many of Martin Bruce's works are just arresting. As a commenter said last episode, I don't comment much, but watch every episode. Longtime lurker and enjoyer, a must for anyone in the art side of Web3. Thank you, Human Boy. And Human Boy has been a big supporter of this show for a long time and a wonderful artist. Check out their profile on Object. Martin Bruce, the wonderful artist of the moment. I really appreciate the words and the time you dedicate to this artist journal, Adrian. Thanks a lot. Wonderful to hear from you, Martin, and keep up the incredible work. Ilay, MoMA's Museum of Modern Art on the phone. What's your email? Love it. Loving the intro with Martin Bruce. Great to hear from you, Ilay, and wonderful AI artwork of the plants and the computers. Nathan Sonic, I've been around the arts for quite a while and can honestly say that I have never been as excited about any art anywhere as much as I am about this space right now. I am looking at some of the works with my mouth agog, unable to look away from the screen. Well, this is exciting, isn't it? Because one thing's for one person to feel this way, there is kind of a growing consensus, around artists like Martin Bruce, Waffles, you name, on and on we could go, Lily Illo and more, whose work we have a very interesting piece by this episode. Jota, thank you so much for sharing my work, Adrian. Pixel Abstract Love. Martin Bruce's work is amazing. So accolades on all sides for Martin Bruce. Wonderful. Great to hear from you, Jota. Awesome piece. Love that pixel art abstract that you do. It's very unique, and you can tell it's yours. Nostalgia Unlimited. GM can't wait to watch this morning. Awesome. Love those Garfield works. You're in Yacon. Time is the necessary ingredient. Yes. Discussing on the recognition, so to speak, of the scene. Always absolutely on point, Pocobelli. Thanks again and again and again for your journal. Well, thank you. You're on Yacon, and we have, I believe, 3 or 4 works this episode. Those streams continue to dazzle. I'm loving seeing the prices go up on those, too. Ramina, my dream is to be on this journal one day. I have posted the communities. This is so once a week is kind of the loose rule, but it's a rule. Do it once a week so that everybody else's work can be seen, too. If you want to be on the show, just post it here, and I will get to it. Dreamer Mind NFT, great to hear from you. Thank you for the comment. Trippy Collector. Well, a ton of comments here. On what is typically an optimistic show, this feels like the most optimistic episode I've seen yet. So much to be excited for. Love those Martin Bruce pieces. That theme seems to always bring unique and engaging works out of the artists who participate. Yeah, the 4 seasons, I believe Trippy is referring to. Canik Zapata, always the best art in the space. I feel so lucky I've seen those Martin Bruce's pixels in real life, so maybe saw the test drive gallery work. We have a couple of works by Canik Zapata this episode. Luciana Guerra, wonderful artist out of Argentina, Buenos Aires. Great to hear from you. Jesse, excited to dig into the Martin Bruce pieces. Trust Abs or Deity to find this gold. Thanks for the intro, Pocobelli. I really enjoyed the show. Glad to hear. August Ground, MoMA on the phone. Awesome to hear from you, August. Pedro Jose, great to hear from you. T-Rick, Rad Show. Small to Midland Galleria were mentioned. This could be on its own show sector. So yes, I think I checked that out, actually, and it looked pretty cool. For worldwide audience, there's still good Americans out there, USA. So not sure. Okay, we'll leave that one there. Have a good one, Pocobelli. Thanks for all the work you've done. Awesome stuff, man. Have a great life. Okay. And I believe I was blocked from that account. I was like, who is this? I tried to like it. And then, anyways, such is life. And actually, a quick little correction. It is Neutro, not Nitro. That I mentioned last episode. Neutro Arts out of Buenos Aires, those wonderful people that invited me last summer, a highlight, as I told them, a life highlight. So shout out to Neutro Arts out of Argentina. Let's continue. I thought this was hilarious. So it's almost like, for me, if I was the professor, this would be like my pop quiz. So here we got a headline. It's nice that in association with Stills, not sure who that is, rejecting digital perfection in Stills' new visual trend report. In other words, what are they trying to say here with rejecting digital perfection? Right? What are they trying to say? They say, okay, embracing candid photography, exploring tactile textures. The report champions a shift away from digital perfection, highlighting the human touch. What do all these things share? It would be the question. Can you answer it? And I have my answer, and it's randomness. embracing randomness. It's, in a sense, it's John Cage, it's Robert Rauschenberg. To a certain degree, Warhol. When you start incorporating, this is actually one of the key things. When you start incorporating, when the process becomes a thing, you look at Kazuhiro Aihara, right? All of a sudden you can start to be random about it because it doesn't matter, because you have your formula and your process, your magical stew that you're putting together, your alchemical stew, and it works. That's, in a sense, the art. So here, it's kind of funny. It's not that it's about rejecting digital perfection, I would argue, or at least if I was the editor, I'd say randomness is what you're trying to say here, is the new visual trend. So interesting. And the New York Times actually did a nice write-up of Jim Shooter, editor who saved the comics industry, dies at 73. I mean, I think I love Jim Shooter and the work, and no, I don't know how difficult he was, and who knows, and I'm not too concerned. However, put it this way, they mentioned it in this article too, his difficulty. I've never heard a single story though. That's my issue. I've never heard, well, actually he did this and how terrible is that? So it's always just hearsay. So what do you do with that? I can't go on hearsay and be like, and start parroting, And so we already discussed this last episode. This seems like, it makes a nice headline, editor who saved the comics industry. Comics would have continued. Comics are in far more dire straits right now, I would argue, than they were in the late 70s when Shooter became editor-in-chief. So, and has it been saved? Because it doesn't feel very saved right now. So I think this headline is, it makes a nice headline. There's the giant Jim Shooter, 6'7". He was only 27 when he became Marvel's editor-in-chief. Maybe that was part of the problem. Maybe that is what happened, because not every 27-year-old is going to know how to manage people. And one of my kind of, old kind of things I say is, one of the issues with the corporate world is it'll often promote people into higher positions of management with giving them no management skills. Right. And to me, this is just it's a complete art. It's incredibly complex. You have to understand human nature. And if you're trying to learn how to manage and you have issues, start with Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's basically management 101. And so perhaps it was because he was 27. But maybe if you're telling a 60-year-old comics guy and you have a 27-year-old telling you what to do, especially in New York in the in the late 70s, maybe that didn't fly so well, right? So again, anyways, nice to see. It was a nice write-up. It's worth checking out. Nicholas Dietrich also was approached by what seems to be a complete scam. Hey, August, they recently DM'd me too. I checked with Real Vision and they said new accounts are popping up every day impersonating them. So beware of what I call the interview scam, where people pretend to come from major media organizations or even just medium-sized media organizations and pretend to want to interview you. It's quite powerful. It really kind of, you go, oh, I finally made it, strokes your ego, and you're like, oh, okay, it's quite powerful scam. This was a big, speaking of Raoul Pal and Real Vision, this is the real Raoul Pal. I thought this was quite a good write-up actually here. Look at 318 retweets. So keep that in mind as we read this. I'm going to go through it quickly. This is a rant, desperate plea for the digital art space. The buyer's experience for new entrants is awful. There is no way to buy simple baskets of art to gain exposure to make it easy to start. No one knows how to enter the space. No one makes it easy. I get asked this every day. How do I start? We fail them. Because, of course, Raoul is pumping the art, or at least saying, as he did with crypto rightly in 2020, I think it was the summer of 2020, where they're going, guys, wake up, this is happening, and they were right. So maybe they'll be right about the digital art thing, but he probably has all these people that watch Real Vision that aren't, super hip to how to buy digital art on Ethereum and or anywhere else for that matter, but mostly Ethereum going, I don't know what to do here. And so let's continue. Even if we say buy a punk, it's not easy. The experience is awful. And it's true. There's no easy curation for newbies. Well, I'd argue this show, and Object does do some curations. Where does someone start? We fail them. Generally speaking, though, this is true. But there are major exceptions to this. And I'd actually say this show, here's some curation, but I mean, we're on the frontiers here. So we're kind of, I guess you might consider us more high risk, small cap. But I do anything that looks good. From my perspective, I don't care if it sells for millions. I'll bring on Baldessari on the show if there were new Baldessaris or Richard Prince. So in a sense, it's not just a small cap sort of market here to speak financially. Let's continue here. People can't show their art without integrating yet another app and connecting it. Indeed, and MetaMask, it's a complete failure. I'd say the crypto industry has had 5 years to figure it out. They've had 5 years and, since 2020, and I feel like it's worse than ever. Someone was telling me about FX Hash. Someone, huge experience, has bought probably thousands of NFTs, is like, I don't know how to do this. It took me 20 minutes just to figure out how to buy it. I mean, this is so let's continue. You store your art in a different place too. Some art doesn't show there because the token is not supported. We fail them. You might borrow against your art on a different place too. It's far from full integration. We fail here too. Well, if you're going to borrow against your art, you are starting to get more in the weeds, but I agree it should be easy if that's something you want to do. You get liquidity maybe even in another place, more mess. Private sales are on a who-you-know basis. So talking, I think, mostly about Ethereum, but probably actually you could say that across the board. New serious buyers have no idea how to do this. We help no one except as individuals. There are three main marketplaces. No one knows, and I wonder, so there's probably more than that. I don't think RAL is on Object yet. No one knows why to use one versus another. They don't help anyone start or build. All are a mess. Like, this does not apply to Object. Object is a brilliant website. But if you're talking about OpenSea, where you load it up and you get a pop-up and you don't know how to close the pop-up, this is their latest thing so that they can have their blur imitation, which is like this financialized NFT thing, when they actually just needed to change the font and the logo probably, in the old version. It was actually, the layout was good. It was the skin, so to speak, the graphic design that was off. Artists mint across various platforms and that fragments further. That's not a problem, in my opinion. Many mints are not on decentralized storage, so you have to risk that too. Yeah, that's an issue. Artists are struggling to showcase work. There's no way to curate for collectors of artists, styles, price points. Discovery is terrible. Yeah, I guess. On-phone display is a mess too, with different solutions, but nothing that integrates with storage and screen display due to lack of integration. My bigger issues are if someone wants to buy art and get onboarded. Like, I've had friends who are like, but what is going on? How does it work? I've made a couple of videos in my defense over here. If you're trying to figure out how to mint art, which is basically the same thing as how to buy art on Tezos. If you can mint art, you can buy art on Tezos. I have a video as well as on Bitcoin, how to put your art on Bitcoin. Then there are all the chains that the art is listed on, again, fragmented too. Anyone show art has an issue with indexing too. No one does a good cross-chain job of it. Yeah, so interesting point. I could go on. It's terrible. This needs to get solved via consolidation of players and a cohesive vision for the art space. I'm not sure if consolidation really makes a ton of sense. I understand where RAL is coming from. What is needed is a very simple way of doing these things. I mean, I wonder about Verse. They take credit card. It's so obvious how big this will all be, but everyone is holding it back by a lack of vision and capital due to lack of vision. This is an interesting point. RAL talks to some pretty rich people, I assume. And so there are people who are like, I like it, but if I don't know how to even do this and I'm some financial whiz, does it really make sense? So I think this is a frustration that RAL Pal is showing here. I've spoken to most of you, but the inertia is exhausting. Right? Where it probably just gets excuses and, anyone who builds this can raise all the capital they need. We need a home for artists and collectors. It doesn't exist. It's a mess. We can do so much better if we consolidate and work to a common goal. Well, it's kind of, I don't know if reducing competition is really going to sort things out here. But I agree that there needs to be more kind of standards within the industry. Also, stop launching tokens. It's a zero value cash grab that fails every time. So this is interesting. Now, I don't know if he's talking about artist tokens, like we're starting to see on FX Hash, or just tokens in general. It does feel like the small cap crypto market is really, has never been less popular, at least since I've been paying attention, which is since 2020, which is interesting. So lots to chew on there. And we got some responses. Ana Maria Caballero, actually don't think Web3's chief problem is UX UI, though it's certainly one, but rather the complete and total subservience to Twitter. It's an interesting, or X, it's actually a pretty interesting point. Like when I talk to people in the contemporary art scene, just curators, collectors, artists, and talking about digital, and where you basically say, well, it's kind of all on X. Like when they're like, oh, how would I follow this? There are a lot of people, especially in the arts, who are not a fan of X. And it's kind of, there is something to be said for this. I don't know what the solution is. Like that's just kind of where it is, right? But it's kind of an interesting point. I would say, though, that Raoul is right, that the chief issue is actually just buying and selling. You know, if I'm spending 40 minutes to burn a work and send an, oh, I don't have enough Ethereum, so I need to send some money to Binance, but, oh, I only have USDT, and Binance doesn't take USDT, and, oh, I don't have any Ethereum in my wallet, so actually I have to send some Ethereum from this other wallet to there because I have $1 left there, and I think I can do the trade on Uniswap. And then I can get to USDC so I can send it to Binance so that I can send it to some other platform, let's say on Bitcoin, and do this. Like this is real. Or so I can buy some ETH, right? Or I guess theoretically you could do it on Uniswap, right? Just go directly to ETH on Uniswap. But you take my point, you know? So anyways, interesting. So an old theme, I'm trying to not get too long here. An old theme is the NFT royalties. So Pranksy, early, I guess, NFT enthusiast, champion of NFTs, Super Prince. NFT royals dying was the beginning of the end. From there on, NFTs went from being art-centered with a revolutionary underlying economic incentive to unite creators and their fans, to meme coin-like gambling vehicles. NFTs don't make sense without royalties. You know, it's quite interesting. I would actually argue that it's actually not, like, I agree that it doesn't help and was a terrible idea, as I explained through, I think, at least 3 episodes or several episodes. You can go back in the archive, like 300 episodes ago. You know, probably around 150 if I had to guess. But I actually think it started dying when the market started to die. That's when all the artists lost interest because they were also, I have a friend, he was speculating and he was buying stuff and he just lost a bunch of money. And, you know, he had a wife. He has a wife. Luckily, he still has a wife. But luckily, in a sense, because all of a sudden you start losing like $1,000, buying and selling digital, who knows what, digital garbage oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, or long-term investments, speculative investments. What's your wife going to think? What is your husband going to think, right? If you're starting to lose thousands of dollars, like that's probably, it's like, I can't do that again. Like my people around me were not happy, right? So I think that's actually what the real thing that just like, and the market died. There's no more money. So it's kind of like the reason why a lot of people came was the money, because people were getting rich and they wanted in on it. This was like the nail in the coffin, as far as I'm concerned, and not that it's dead, but it was kind of like, it was an accent. It was on top of a terrible market then you get this idea of all these people defending no royalties and how, oh, this is actually a good idea. Blah, blah. Now it's like, oh, actually, it's not such a good idea. We actually undermined ourselves. And we're kind of back to the cryptocurrency aspect of this and the market. And, Object, to their credit on Tezos, but Object never, actually put their neck out and said, we're not doing that over here. And it shows that they're art first, right? And all these other platforms are not, clearly. Because if you're art first, you want to support the artists, right? So it's that simple. And so Dutch Tide, let's not forget Blur.io started this, which is true. OpenSea simply followed the path and had to compete. Well, they didn't have to. And what would have been better for them in the long term? I made the argument at the time that the better long-term thing to do is to act on values, because that, at the end of the day, is what resonates with people over long periods of time. That is the long-term view. People resonate with values. You almost fall in love with people based on their values after a certain point. Unfortunately, fair market dynamics, however, it still very much sucks. Yeah, and it's like, oh, well, that's just the market that, we just need to have zero rules, right? And, oh, well, if we can do it, we can do it. I mean, Object works fine. Actually, they've shown it can work. And it's still a free, fair market. They just have a rule that if someone can set a royalty and that royalty is respected by the platform. So, going long here, the JPEG gallery, and we still have a ton of comments to get through. The digital art market is incredible considering how few collectors there are at this point in the game. I agree. It is actually remarkably small, and it's impressive, the liquidity, in a sense of it, the depth. Jedi Wolf, my journey in real life collecting finally ended in 2024 after I bought a $5,000 artwork and had to pay about $450 in import taxes and logistics. If you're complaining about $1 to $10 blockchain transaction costs, try collecting in real life outside your country, not to mention the 2-week wait. Yeah, and like the shipping on top of it if you're an artist. I remember selling a work, it was nice, sold a work for $1,500, 1,500 euros. And then 250 euros of shipping. This little thing, take off the stretcher bar, you roll up the canvas, and you ship this whole thing, and it costs 250 euros. Generally, the collector is supposed to pay for it, and they did, actually, but they didn't come back after that, and you don't blame them, because they didn't expect that. Eli Scheinman, but good friend of mine, actually, in Saskatoon. Eli Scheinman, the class of 2020-21 collectors were early adopters willing to tinker, experiment, and imagine a new future for artists in the collecting experience. 2022-23 saw the influx of mass extractors and those who collected primarily to signal rather than fundamentally support the movement. The collectors who arrived in 24-25 are perhaps the most interesting of the lot. They arrived during the post-hype bear market and are here for the very long term. They are non-consensus thinkers and some of the most thoughtful individuals I've met in person. This kind of rings true, doesn't it, from what we see? So interesting there. And Cosmo making some waves here. Why not much action lately? So generative art is being called into question. You can see my vote by accident here. It was a fad instead. I think you could have picked any of these. No great mints since 20. Well, I don't know if you could pick any of these. I probably would have picked something else, actually, had I known this would be shown. And so, but what this highlights is there's, like I was looking at the squiggles, for example. Those are at 3.5 ETH. I thought those were at 10 ETH. Like 10 ETH, like maybe, I don't know, 18 months ago. The Fidenzas, which were at generally around 90 to 100 ETH, are now, and correct me if I'm wrong, I saw it 30. Now, ETH has gone up in price, so maybe it all evens out, but it is interesting. I see folks arguing on the timeline about generative art again. No one doubts the speculative bubble that happened. So you're starting to hear, like, prices are coming down. But the marrying of blockchain seeding for generative algorithms was novel and represented a kind of live canonical performance of an algorithm. Punk 5185, I'll give you the most honest version. Much of the work was P5JS practice exercise level output, and it took collectors way too long to realize they overpaid. So in a sense, it was simpler than you might realize. Tons of supply and bad distribution and no demand. Demand at scale only exists temporarily because of Three Arrows Capital and the COVID phenomenon. I would argue it was a outcome. I mean, we're back to the cryptocurrency speculators as your de facto art consultants is basically what happened here. Is okay, Three Arrows Capital decides they want to spend ridiculous amounts of money, and then Cosimo de' Medici decides he wants to spend ridiculous amounts of money on some algorithm art. I see the computer freezing here. We got to be careful. Okay, so, algorithm art. And so, and then people follow along and go, well, they know what they're talking about. And maybe they do, maybe they don't. Right? Or maybe they have some idea, but they might not have, so you got to be careful with who you're listening to. Gen Art doesn't have many artists. It has engineers and developers who correctly realized it was a gold rush 4 years ago. But I think this is key. It was also coders, right? This was art for coders. This is where the coder became the artist, the coder artist, you might call it. And which made sense. Like, that was the thing. So it was kind of a thing. So let's continue. Funds all ran out of money minimum 2 years ago, except for HiveMind. People are bored of the same gen art geometric aesthetic, and artists can't sell, so either don't release or move on to AI. It has gotten a lot quieter, hasn't it? DA's killed the market, and virtually everything is 90% down, plus ETH is down a ton, and collectors own no assets to overcome huge losses. Bonus, there's still an insane amount of people quietly waiting to dump, and prospective buyers know this. Buyer's market, I guess. This is interesting here, too, finally, on this. Jedi Wolf, not to mention it is almost entirely soulless. This is an interesting point. And I think this is an overstatement, and it really depends on the work, and it depends what's going on. You could see, again, what Zigmar Polka and Warhol doing as a kind of algorithm. So, some people have talked about 433 on this show, or commented how that could be seen as an algorithm. So, nevertheless, part of the reason I don't show barely any generative art is because it doesn't jump out at me personally. It doesn't have that excitement of the human in it. It's a little too cold. It's a little too abstract. There's not enough, and by that I mean in contrast with, I don't feel it enough. It's too in the idea world and not enough in the sensation world. It doesn't inspire me. And you feel like once you've seen the algorithm, you see a few outputs, you go, oh, that's a pretty cool experiment. Or a pretty cool output, but you're not it doesn't necessarily give that flash of inspiration. Oftentimes, I think we tend to feel the energy, emotions, and intentions artists put into their work. What is soulless and what is not? There's a lot of generative art with so much soul in it, it's difficult to even comprehend. But it's an interesting point, the soulless, because I've heard it before. Other people mentioning it. Finally, Sabato. Midnight Hot Take. The biggest failure of the post-20 generative art is the hyper-financialization of individual outputs through loot box mechanics. Collectors should have more opportunities to collect the algorithm itself because that's the actual art. The output becomes arbitrary. Interesting. Of course, that means a big chunk of gen art in the crypto space is dubious because we all know it is based off tutorials or other people's code. Yeah, there's very few series that really... I would argue the Fidenzas do work over time. But even the Fidenzas, but there aren't many, series that really keep inspiring you over time. Mr. Fox, so I don't know if we can get into all these. I have too many comments here. The only reason people cared about art blocks was because it was an easy narrative for everybody to agree on during peak liquidity. Again, this was driven more by the cryptocurrency market than by encoders. In a sense, you're making cryptocurrency speculators and coders your main art consultants here. When you buy in to, say, Fidenzas, as I said, Fidenzas were reselling in the casino for millions within a few weeks of mint. Nothing goes from nothing to something that quick. People then use these sales to argue historical significance. Indeed, people will then use the sale to retroactively say, okay, so therefore it's meaningful. And you'll see this a ton in the digital art market. And have held onto gen art popularity during that period as evidence of something real without any concession that maybe something should be actually historically significant before it sells for a lot and not the other way around. This is a damning indictment, actually, of what often happens in the crypto digital art sphere. I might wager that none of these gen art collections will ever see new all-time highs. Yes, all the NFTs are down from 2021, but markets like punks X copy have stabilized or even seen growth since the bottom. There is zero bid for any of this gen art stuff. It's quite interesting. Time doing its work. Not to mention, it is almost entirely soulless. So this is where that came from. Offers zero commentary on anything and completely lacks any emotional resonance. I'm simply never showing someone a ringer. So we're not trying to identify individual series here. But nevertheless, if I'm trying to show them the possibilities of digital art, negativity is a poison, but there's clearly a group stuck in la la land about a lot of stuff, and it really can't go through with us. This is a point I've been making here for quite a while now, which is there's going to be a reckoning. This is the reckoning, in the generative art space. We'll see how it goes for the rest of the, what could be called the crypto art space, because there are quite some pretty, heady valuations there. B21, the days of 10,000 collections are over. Please reward the collectors who are still in the market with smaller collections. 3,000 pieces would be valuable for all enthusiasts. So here you see Slips 1233, Pixel Fool 1016, or sorry, that's Rudzane maybe. E-Boy 1566, Cyphered 2050. And here I thought this was awesome. Look at this physical sculpture, so to speak. I don't know how this was made. Enamel pin. How cool is that? That's posted by rare.jpg on X. And here's Element Lee. Look at this minimal physical. This is, I continue to be dazzled here by Element Lee. So beautiful combination. Traveling through the mediums of pixel art and physical, very daring work. Komeito Art Center. So this is a close-up on a Hermipe, also doing pixel art on paper. And you see the embossed kind of shininess. Quite interesting. It looks like they're for sale. So, and here is a cassette tape with some pixel art writing on it. So that's also Hermipe. As we're at 56 minutes, and we're basically beginning the show here. The Way, Yuri J. with some spectacular works. Interesting Christian theme, which I could have waxed on poetically. I am, and I guess what I'll say about it is, for me, I love seeing this, and I'm not a Christian. But again, to me, it almost feels counterculture at this point to start putting, because we're seeing weirdly, I think, like we saw it with Gogolitis, we've seen a few works. It's a bit of a thing. I don't know if there's a reason for it. We're seeing quite a few Christian works here. And so as we see here, this looks like, this, different stages of the cross. We see repetition. And this beautiful texture really kind of captures something here, and I think it's just super interesting for artists to be doing this. And I just think it's cool. Like, you know what it reminds me of? It evokes the Vatican. They have an area, like kind of like the last room. They're not that nice of rooms. It's like after you go to the Sistine Chapel and you see Michelangelo, then you see some 20th century kind of Christian works. And it's a little boring until you see the Dalís. There's a couple of Dalís, which are pretty spectacular. I think of this stuff and I go, wow, this is I think the Vatican would frankly be all over this. And I mean, there's something to be said for that. The Way, great title. I think they would be like, oh, digital art, Christian theme, like they would be all over this. It's not making fun of us, seemingly. So here we go. More Yuri J. So here. So as you see, all of the majesty and the randomness, really, and the controlled randomness and the different layers upon layers and, effects upon effects. That's the great thing about digital is you can keep transforming it, unlike paint. A key difference. You keep adding paint, it eventually all turns brown or gray or maybe even black. Crucifixion, Trio. So just a gorgeous series here, doing quite well on the market, I might add. So here, Jesus and the Two Robbers, and look at this, the trademark mosaic filter. Wonderful, and here is super reconstructed illustration from a very old anthology of picaresque novels. This is all from a series called Old Stories. And there you see a super processed version of the Crucifixion. and edition of 12. I think these are all sold out, by the way. Maybe this one, there's 4 gone. Passions, another one. So Yuri J killing it, selling a ton of this work, and it's selling too. And look at this great kind of, again, very just like unique and cutting edge digital artist here. So again, no shortage of talent out here. Here's the Isolationist before. Cool painting here. So here, oops, it's for an exhibition, Eidetic Memory. So of course, Isolationist often doing busts. And so here we have some writing, kind of a nice moody one here. It's a nice digital painting that's on Object, edition of 1 and unlisted. Here is Lorem Ipsum, Can't Stand Another Fire. Another nice digital painting here. This is on Manifold. So I believe this is digital, pretty sure. Nice piece here, and this starts at 0.05 ETH. That is on Manifold. Here is Tatty Art, A Little Happiness in Silence. Kind of like this piece. I can't remember who posted this. I thought this was just a nice, kind of beautifully rendered, fun piece here, and just great subject matter. This is something where everybody, including the kids, can enjoy at the museum here. Great composition, by the way, with the clouds underneath on top of this beautiful, luscious grass. 50 cents. And how many left? Looks like 1 left. 6 left for 50 cents. Can't go wrong there. Here's Musty. Spoon. Look at this. So here, cool spoon here. So highly textured, very nice. Love the reflections here on this I love the kind of minimalism of this piece. A little drop shadow there. Edition of 3, and that's sold, all transferred. One to Strange Thing, one to Absurd Deity, and one to an anonymous wallet. Here's Ilya Bliskin, who of course I follow. Here, as you see, kind of photography and painting and kind of trademark splashes, so to speak, or brushwork from Ilya Bliskin. So interesting piece there. Playground. Here's Family Lounge by 1,000 Lands. The golden age of air travel was the 60s to the 80s. Legroom. Was this on a plane? Wow. That's pretty cool. And again, some very interesting textures here. And again, what look like effects on effects. So interesting pieces. Here, edition of 5, and that is sold out. Here is Nuv 1914, and a few new canvases here, accepting an offer at 100 Tezos. So coming back with a bang, Nuv 1914. Beautiful work there. And here is another one, and this one has been sold for 100 Tezos. So bringing in some real money here. And so here again, cool experimentation, combining a whole bunch of the previous ideas into these kind of, there's something to be said for kind of making a grand canvas, isn't there? A grand painting. People want to pay more money for that rather than just segmented and whatever, just having that grand canvas. There's something to be said for it. Also an edition of 1. Here's Joain Ethestera, edition of 16, or sorry, number 16. We'll see if it loads. That's on super rare. I'm not sure it's going to load, and because these are gigantic files, I'm not going to risk it because we're already at an hour 3. So beautiful work here by Joain. This sold for $756 or 0.3 ETH. Nice work. AI artwork. AI abstract. Here's a chrono grid on Object, also as part of an Object 1 show, and that was accept offer for 44 Tezos, edition of 10. And as you'll see here, this is how crazy AI is getting in terms of the textures. It is getting next level. This is AI, I believe. That is wild, isn't it? Digital mixed media and AI. Here is Gaspard de la Guerre Open Mint, and this is 2 Tezos Brunch. Wonderful theme. And here, so cool kind of vector-like abstract. And continuing on, here's Quampa, Color Composition Study, MS Paint. And so here you see work by Quampa in, I believe, Microsoft Paint, as it says. So cool work there. Look at that, 459,000 views, 5.2 thousand retweets. Quampa continuing to kill it. What is Quampa's? 46,000 followers. Amazing. I tell you, I mean, once you sort of hit critical mass, I mean, I imagine the numbers themselves will sell. Like you're going to have enough customers just once you have a big enough following. So all very interesting. Time, a good reason to post your work. You know, time. So here's Santiago, also known as Time. Beautiful combination of vector and pixelation. Nice background color. Keeping it new, keeping it fresh. Here is also Time on objects. Stay everywhere, go nowhere. Also keeping it fresh over here. So who knows how this was made. And so big pixels, almost like AI textures, not even sure. Edition of 14, and that is sold out at 5 Tezos. Healthy Market, L'Inquisiteur, Orpheus, a wonderful theme. Could read that one, and loving the renderings here. Again, we're kind of back to that idea of just having the big canvas. I wonder if this is 9 by 16, might fit onto a one of those HD TVs perfectly. This sold out at, so this is doing really well at 4 Tezos. So bringing in a quick 40 Tezos sprint study. Here is, how cool is this? Enigmatris, 32,000 views, 203 retweets, and here it is broken down. So taking a page out of the, I think, E.J. Etienne Jules Marie playbook, if I'm not mistaken. Lorna Mills, Chassel Dame, and so a chaser of souls. And then we see here kind of a pixelated out, not sure where this comes from. Maybe a lemon head, I don't know. Edition of 32 for 25 Tezos. Here's Mumbleboy, Okane Kaseiju. And I should really speed up. So again, a combination of physical, collage, and digital. Look at this. Look at all this wonderfulness. Great work here, and a big picture of a person. That's 9 Tezos edition of 2. And here is Haiti Rocket edition of 15. Let's see if this plays. Welcome to, classic series here by Haiti Rocket with some, where basically you see a camera kind of go in and some Windows 95 type screens and Mortal Kombat references. All wonderful here, and those sold for 42 Tezos each on primary, now 142 on secondary. Here is Slime. As you see here, Ghostbusters and Nintendo Glitch ROM. You just see the energy of Haiti Rocket, totally rad. As it says there, new Ghostbusters 2 has definitely, I don't know how he does it, actually. He's just got his own vibe on the glitch ROMs. Here's another glitch ROM. This is Kyle Flemmer with his own vibe. Hole 18, Spanish Bay, edition of 10, and that is sold out at $888. Let's take a look. So kind of looking like a later, cool orange there. Maybe looking like a later, this looks like almost an arcade game, doesn't it? It looks like that Pro Golf is what that PGA Tour 97 for PlayStation is what it is. Continuing on, also Kyle Flemmer, edition of 10, Sector 1. So we saw this in progress, and here it is, some beautiful glitchery from Kyle Flemmer. So nice work here. And there you see it all. Okay, awesome. And quite large too, and that is sold out at $888 as well. Canik Zapata. We went to the art gallery, so Roberta could show us his most recent dream. So a couple of art gallery works here. Interesting, kind of blocked out person here, almost like a drawing. Intense work, edition of 12, sold out. Here, Marcelo taking a picture of a paint, and this is on its way to being sold out here, but still available. Cool work. Like that a lot, with the big painting in the background. Great composition, probably using AI, a Midjourney output with cellular automatic. Great composition here, Midjourney. Ed Woods, red, and great choice by Canik Zapata to choose that one. Red Wine, and so here, again, another combination of text and image here. Very cool. Love the animation here. The chunky animation by Ed Woods, edition of 18, and that is sold out at $666. Here's Pamelo Chirone, Master Superpan Collector, a totally original pixel art with a bit of texture here for contrast, interestingly. As you see here, just signature colors by Pamelo Chirone out of Argentina. La Pampa, Argentina. Here's Pixelare. As it says here, peace. So a message of peace, and it is reflected underneath a pixel artwork here with a little bit of noise included in the animation. And That, I think, is available on Object. Here is Françoise Gamma with a cool work here, a pixel art animation. This is on Instagram. Not sure, maybe this is available on Rodeo or Object or nowhere, not sure. Here's that pinball guy with a Pepe. I thought pretty original Pepe here. Very nice piece again from that pinball guy, only 50 cents, edition of 100. Byte by bit, JUX or JUX, and cool kind of space work here. And this is using graphics too. Nice piece and nice and small. Edition of 1, that is still available for 15 Tezos. Here's Nicholas Sassoon, Waterfalls 91. This could be older, not sure, but we see the cycling work, which we saw some clues into last time. Beautiful colors here. Very original process from Nicholas Sassoon. Uran Yacon, stream number 93. So here are some new streams from Uran Yacon. Great colors here. Here is another one. Look at how broken down this is. And they are selling for 63 Tezos. So stream number 90, very cool. And here's another one, stream number 89, keeping it new, also selling this one for 54. So cool work there. And one more, number 88, edition of 1, and selling for 64. So wonderful work there. Here's Gino. Traversal. So what looks like Mount Kilimanjaro, if I had to guess, but could be Etna, who knows. So cool work there. Does it say? No, a mountain and glitch and edition of 7, and that sold out at 7 Tezos. Here is Ex-Mortal incorporating again AI into the workflow here. So one wonders if this is an AI landscape, AI video landscape. It's interesting. We're going to see this again later in the show with a physical work. Here is Sky Goodman, picked up by Spiegels Maskinen. All these terrible lucid dreams remind me I chose the wrong profession. MS-DOS expressionism. So cool glitch technique here from, and it's also using AI from Sky Goodman. And here's another one. It's created with stable diffusion, image to image. So very interesting piece here that's picked up by Glitched for 30 Tezos. Here's Lily Illo. Look at this. As we run through the rest of this show. So we see a blanket. This is AI. And it's pretty cool. I mean, it's like dreams coming to life here, isn't it? Pretty cool. Such a Dying Fall edition of 1. And so, yeah, 4K video file. I'm pretty sure this is AI art, indeed. Here's No Hygiene. I thought this was great. I don't know what it means, but I think it's cool. My new memes. Heartbreak plus heart equal heartbreak and heart in together. No Hygiene, also. Purple angel here, so keeping it cool. Here's Redrum, or Red Rum, as I was corrected on a while ago. Cool AI artwork here, almost kind of an early modernist feel to it. Nice piece. And here's Richard Nadler with some meat and also combining it with what looks like kind of a Japanese print style here. And here's another one. Look at that. These would make interesting physicals, wouldn't they? So cool work from Richard Nadler. Here is Ganbrood. They told me their plans for the weekend. So cool kind of sci-fi and AI drawing here. Very cool. Love the color. Very nice. Edition of 36 for 64. And they are beginning to sell. And this was pretty cool too. This was just online. Charlene von Heil, Captain Petzel. Pretty nice, interesting painting here. This is in Berlin, I believe, but not positive on that. Max Geisler, who I also saw the show in Berlin, Investigation Landscape. You know, see how you almost see like the influence of the phone and finger painting. It's almost like it's been masked out, or like white has been put on top, or masking out the painting. Interesting. Again, it makes it relevant. You see it here again. Investigation Landscape number 2, acrylic and lacquer on canvas. So pretty interesting show there. Nice piece here by Die With The Most Likes. Looking great. This work here, one of the Glorious Slab of Meat by Die With The Most Likes. Nice piece. Continues to work like crazy. Ken Consumer, I believe out of Berlin here. And some cool, I wonder, like works with the pen plotter. So I wonder if these are painted in collaboration with a pen plotter. See underneath too? So not sure what's going on, but it's pretty cool. Here's another one, also by Ken Consumer. Very cool paintings here. And also Camino Art Center. Maybe we saw this already. I think we saw this. This was the Maybe we didn't. So I wanted to show this kind of pixel art piece, this pixel art painting here. So nice piece from the Komeito Art Center out of Japan. This is what I was talking about. This has John Baldessari. This is Arnaud Beck. You see the brushwork? It's just put in there to get a texture, and then even just a little bit of color in there, just enough to make it interesting. It's all you need. Brilliant minimalism from Arnaud Beck. I suspect these woodcuts are simulated. In other words, I suspect these are AI-created woodcuts that have been airbrushed, using the airbrush, interestingly, that have been airbrushed onto canvas. I suspect that's what's going on here with some pretty cool underpainting. Makes a great series, probably wouldn't even take you that long, right? How cool is that? So Arnaud Beck, acrylic on canvas. So continues to dazzle. Here's Machine with a kitten. So cool work there. And here is Ilya Barabin, or Barabin. The carousel is spinning. This is part of a larger series. Just a cool drawing of a merry-go-round, or a whatever you'd call that. Forgive me, at an hour and 15 minutes in, my friends, look at the, wow. I did not expect this. The Batman. Wow. This is by Musty, and given to Strange Thing. I thought it was just a cool version of an action figure. I didn't realize how detailed it was. And here is Kyla Mattis. So Not Happy, probably on July 4th here, and there you see an upside-down American flag, beautifully rendered as textiles. Thank you for watching, my friends. Until next time, take care, and check out this awesome work by Bazaya.